and welcome to the first official podcast of the Arsenal Fan Theory, along with Bren, Mike, and Dean. I'm Bren, I'll be one of your hosts. I've been an Arsenal supporter for the best part of 17 years, and just before we get started, please go follow our Instagram page at Arsenal Fan Theory, and please note that we are working under technical difficulties. It's still lockdown here in South Africa, so we're very dependent on the internet connection. Let's just get started. Dean, introduce yourself.
Hi guys, firstly I'd just like to say how excited I am to be on the show. Let me start a bit with my history. I started playing football, or soccer as we call it in South Africa, at a very young age, probably around about 6-7 years old. First at school, then climbed up into the districts, which is provincial size, and then from there, played youth size at the local clubs, local clubs here in South Africa. And then, due to injury, with injury that laid me off for long, and I got into coaching. And from there, I built up my badges, and now I'm currently sitting with my CAF B license, one license away. So, working towards that. That, of course, comes with time and experience and all of that. Also, I haven't been coaching for about 2.5 years now, but I still follow the game religiously. On the Arsenal side, I have been supporting them for longer than I've been playing. Started off with, of course, legends like Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, Ian Wright, Robert Pires, the list can go on. But that's where I drew my inspiration from those guys and the way they played. And of course the way Arsenal played, possession game, beautiful game. And that's pretty much history.
You obviously know how long me and Michael have. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo coming through, but you obviously know how long me and Mike have been supporting Arsenal. You introduced us to the game through legends like Henry. And the fact being, me and Mike haven't really played competitive football. He might have played a bit more, but he'll dive into that now. Mike?
Well, Bren, I don't really feel like I need to introduce myself now because you basically just covered most of it. One thing I would like to add is obviously you can also follow us on YouTube, and we will be releasing the podcast series as well. And then you can also follow us on Twitter on @TheoryArsenal. But like Dean said, I'm also really excited to be here. I've been an Arsenal fan a little bit more than 10 years now. It took me a while to really get into the game, to fall in love with the sport. I obviously started watching through yourself and Dean. And ever since about 9 years ago, when I actually started to really watch football and really get into it, it's been eat, sleep, drink Arsenal.
Yeah, and it's been difficult, I think, for all of us not being able to watch, other than the Bundesliga, for the last few weeks now, any football. I think it's been longer than a normal break. Regarding that, this whole lockdown situation, everything that's happened, it's an unprecedented time. And Dean, what do you think the effects are going to be on the restart of the season? If we can take the Bundesliga as an example, just to see how they've implemented. What do you think? Have you watched games firstly? And how do you think the Premier League can adapt and use their strategy to get the Premier League go up and running?
Firstly, I haven't actually watched any of the Bundesliga games, unfortunately. But I'll definitely follow the Premiership. I think the biggest impact that we've all seen is the empty stadiums. I can't imagine what kind of effect that can have on the players in a sense of a boost, or basically that 12th man. The crowd, as you've heard, most of the lower teams especially they use these crowds to edge them on, especially against the bigger teams, and this gets them results that they maybe won't be able to get if there are no fans. So firstly, I think it's going to affect the teams a lot. I think the more quality there is, so the bigger teams will suffer less than the lower teams. That doesn't take any quality away. I just feel that they don't have the 12th man. Then, yeah, in terms of the fans, I don't know if you've ever look. Like I said, I haven't watched the Bundesliga games, but I have watched games behind closed doors before, and all you hear is the players. You can't even sometimes hear them clearly what they're shouting. Referees whistle loud, so it's not the same atmosphere over TV as well without the fans. So I think it's going to affect the game in ways we won't even be able to predict yet. But somewhat.
On that, Mike, I know you've watched a few Bundesliga games. I don't know how many you've watched other than the ones we've chatted about. The Bundesliga has recently brought this thing in where they've got this virtual fan. So when people are watching on TV, it sounds like they're fans in the stadium, which is actually quite cool. It's not the same, but it does give that type of effect. And also, we've seen the stronger teams dominating the Bundesliga because, like you mentioned, it's that you don't have that home crowd advantage or that away disadvantage, away day disadvantage. Michael, what do you think? Especially now, I think there's going to be a bigger gap between the bigger and the smaller teams. But also, there's now 5 substitutes allowed. I saw it's a new rule for this period. How do you think that's going to affect the games?
Well, Brent, firstly, I think it's really interesting that you brought up about the Bundesliga, that some of the clubs actually brought in virtual fans. Because I read about Arsenal, I don't know how much truth there is behind this, but they're also thinking about selling, or not even selling, getting in fans on Zoom meetings so that you can have that effect of actually being at the stadium. Obviously, it will not have the same effect of being sitting there live and hearing the crowds go wild, but I think from a fan's perspective, it is like a nice middle ground to say. But yeah, definitely I think quality is going to show through a lot more without the fans. There is still a bit of a home ground advantage in my opinion because it's quite well known that the Emirates Stadium is a bit bigger than a lot of the other clubs. So when playing at the Emirates, the Arsenal players would obviously feel a lot more comfortable. They've got a lot of space to work with, and those are things that you can use to your advantage.
I mean, obviously, we just can't wait for the season to get started. And on that, I listened to an interesting thing on one of the podcasts I listened. It's the Oscars, where they did a comparison between what they would want to see on the day of the 17th when we play Man City and what they think Michael Arteta is going to choose. Dean, let's start with you. What do you think is Arteta's team? His 1 to 11 that he's going to start on the day.
So looking at the training videos and training photos, picking up pieces and what I think he's going to choose. Of course, Bernard Leno makes number 1 keeper. That's all day long. Then Bellerin's looking fit. You can see him using there in training a lot. Definitely in the matches. A couple of the training matches they've had leading up to the first game against City. Then centre back on the right side, I would go with Socrates. I would rate that Arteta would go with Socrates. Then left centre side would be David Luiz. And then I've seen Kieran Tierney coming into action again. I saw him in these warm-up games we're talking about now. He's looking fit. I'm hoping and I'm sure Arteta is going to give him the chance now. It looks to be the case. In the centre of the park, I rate he would be going with Xhaka, and I'm going to risk it, say Guendouzi, because he does look to be doing, but I know he's not favoured him. You never know. He's turned it around. Either Guendouzi or Torreira. Between the two, he's going to go with. Right hand side, Pepe. Up behind the striker, Ozil. left hand side Martinelli, and then striker Aubameyang. That's what I rate Arteta would be going with.
I'm just going to jump to Michael quickly. Let him compare what he thinks Arteta, and I'll do my comparison before we do maybe the teams we would prefer seeing and how much that differs from the Arteta, what we think Arteta is going to do. Mike, just sit a little bit back. Your head's cutting off a little bit from my side. Here we go. And then you can, I think, don't name your 1 to 11. Maybe just start or replace players that you think aren't going to be there according to Arteta's team, obviously.
Well, Brent, I just wanted to add for anyone who is watching this video or podcast or whatever. We did try to do our first episode last week, and during the week that has passed, my team that I named last week has actually changed quite a bit from what I saw with Arsenal's social media posts and whatever. So obviously Bernd Leno gets the nod. I would go with Bellerin, and Tierney I think is definitely going to do that. I think he'll go with Louise and probably Mari for City. And in midfield I've got a funny feeling he'll try to do Xhaka, like Dean said, and instead of Guendouzi I think he'll play Ceballos. Yeah, in midfield we're still playing Mesut Ozil at the attacking role. And then we'll probably have a front three of Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Reece Nelson.
Mike, I actually agree with you. Most of your team. I think I think he's going to start Mustafi. I don't know if
Over
there's
Mari,
an injury. Yeah, over Mari. Because if you look at his last few games before the lockdown started, I just feel other players were available to him. I think Socrates was fit. I think Mari was just getting into contention. He might have been a bit unfit still, but I feel he still chose to put Mustafi in the centre. And I think he's going to go with either a midfield of Xhaka, Guendouzi, and Ceballos, or Xhaka, Guendouzi, and that's Xhaka, Torreira, and Ceballos, just to get a bit of the extra defensive stability. Even though I know Ozil is one of Arteta's main men. But on that, Dean, what do you think? What do you think you should go with?
I think you should go with pretty much almost the same couple of changes. Leno, Bellerin on the right. I would rather go with Mori. I agree with you. He looked a lot. He looked probably I would agree with Michael there. Sorry, that he would go with Mori. He looked the best defender besides Luiz out of any defender before the break. I agree with you, Mustafi, a very improved player, but I think the quality of Mari gets the nod. David Luiz, of course. Then Tierney, I would like to see Tierney. I still think we've got to see a lot of things from him. Then Xhaka, Torreira in the centre of the park with Ceballos in front of them. Like you guys said, just a bit more defensive solidity, against City would be more important. And I don't see that coming from from Ozil. I see that more in a Ceballos type of player. Then, Lacazette probably up front. I think Aubameyang would be forced to play out wide left, and Pepe on the right.
Mike, any changes?
Well, Brent, the side I would like to see play against City is more or less the side that I just said I think Arteta would start. The only change I would make is probably Reece Nelson for Pepe, because I still think Pepe has a lot to bring for the club and he still has a lot to show. But saying that, I'm still excited to see a lot of the Arsenal players. I'm excited to see Martinelli. I'm excited to see Torreira and Guendouzi. I'm excited to see Willock and Ketia. All the young players coming through, Saka. But yeah, for the first game against Man City, I would like to see Leno, Bellerin, Luiz, Mari, Tierney, Ceballos, Ozil, Xhaka, Pepe, Aubameyang, and Lacazette.
Dean, I know I did ask this to Michael, But do you
Sorry,
think?
repeat that again.
Sorry, I think we did touch this a bit with Michael. Can you hear me? I just wanted to find out
Yeah.
from you, how do you think this 5 substitutions is going to affect maybe Arteta's preparations and his overall squad selection throughout the season?
Yeah, so that's a new tactic that managers can start using. Sometimes it's risky to leave a star player, let's say like Ozil on the bench. A lot of people might raise eyebrows, but it's not that you can't bring this player in later. And now you've got an option to bring 5 players in, as well as keep the legs fit. So I don't know. Managers are gonna, the good manager is gonna exploit this new rule change because of COVID-19, and you know maybe his individual tactics towards some players are run your legs off for the 60 minutes and I'll replace you. Make sure nothing gets past you.
That's interesting, because I also heard the same arguments on the Arsenal Vision podcast, where they were talking about the smaller teams might play into their hands, because they basically have a whole half of the team with fresh legs, so they can just run bash players, play their type of football where they do the fouling. You can just replace your players with yellow cards in the second half. I mean, it's going to be a big dynamic change in the whole Premier League, I feel, if they have these 2 additional substitutions available.
Yeah, you see, there's a part that I didn't even touch on. Yellow cards, tactical fouls. Now you can get and you've seen it with clubs. We don't want to point fingers at it, but City are known for their tactical fouls, and Arteta was there. So these teams will use this opportunity now, and even though City and these teams have used it, they don't get called on the first time. It takes a couple. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys use all these avenues to change the game for them.
Mike, and who do you think is going to benefit more? Is it going to benefit the bigger teams or the smaller teams?
Well, Bren, teams are going to have to play to their strengths, the top 6, obviously, and not only the top 6, but like City, Liverpool, United, Chelsea, Arsenal, all those, they have a lot more quality throughout their squad. So they will probably rely on more individual quality or team quality, in my perspective, where your smaller teams, such as, I say Sheffield, but you see how they're doing in the Premier League. Yes, Newcastle, Brighton, all those sides, they more used to playing the hard type of football, quick, hard football, where they have to play to their strengths. Try and take, well, not injure players, but be physical with them, and they'll have to basically play their hearts out for the whole 90 minutes. The top sides will obviously have more quality, but where the low sides will shine through is the determination throughout the squad, and that's what they'll have to use to their advantage.
Yeah, but I mean, I think a lot of the times the quality pays through is when the people start getting tired. They've got their tired legs, the lapses of concentration. It's more than there's a big opportunity for guys who just slip past the defender that's not concentrating. So I don't know if that element of the game might be lost with these substitutions. But it's something we'll have to see play out at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, definitely. It is obviously easier to get past the tired defender, but look, if the real quality tends to shine through in big moments. So the rest of the season, with everything that's going on in the world, it's every game's a big match. So I'm sure we'll get a lot of upsets throughout the rest of the season, and I'm just actually really excited to see what's going to happen going forward.
Dean, obviously this was a stop-start season. Do you think this is going to affect where Arsenal ends up? And should we as fans be as critical of them if they don't reach the top 5, top 4, whatever the case is from here, because of these stop-start situations?
Well, I don't think it's fair to put it on the team that they need to make top 4. I think the club have laid out a few incentives, definitely financially, for these players to make top 4, and for us, we need to make it back into the top 4, of course, because of our financial struggles have been well documented in the past couple of weeks, especially with them asking to take pay cuts, and extra pay cuts can be taken again once we don't make Champions League next season. So I think there's big incentive for the players to make Champions League. It's financially for the club as well, but realistically, as a fan, I don't know if we can't put that pressure, especially if City's appeal is not upheld. I did see that they are, right this moment, they are putting their case forward. So I think, I'm not too sure they have set out a date with the hearing, but they said beginning to middle of next month, there will be a verdict on their ruling. So it's all down to me on that. I think 4th spot is, top 4 is done. If City's ban do not get upheld, or if it gets upheld, there is no chance of us making top 4. But I guess there's a slim chance if that fifth position is open. But that also, to me, comes down to us beating City on the first game. So,
Brendon, can I just join in quickly? Well, this break obviously came at a better time for a lot of teams than others. You can take Arsenal and Spurs into perspective. Spurs had a lot of injuries. They weren't looking good under Mourinho without Son or Kane. Arsenal had a lot of more time to work with Arteta, so he can get his ideas through a bit more, see what the players are doing or what they want to do. Whereas it might, in my opinion, might not have been as good for sides like or clubs like Chelsea or Leicester. Leicester were on unbelievable form going through the Premier League, and I think the break might have just stopped their momentum a bit. And the same with Chelsea, So it gives this lockdown break gives a lot of clubs the chance to recuperate and get back on track to where they wanted their season to go.
Well, I think you can also jump in here, but I think Leicester actually started losing a lot of momentum just before the break started. And I mean, they had players like Vardy that was injured, that was a big part of that, but he's probably back now. So if there was a slim chance of catching up to Leicester, which I think it's already too far out of reach, I think that's gone with the whole break. I think they'll accumulate enough points to get back in there. We'll stay in that top 3, top 4 positions.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Firstly, with Michael, with Tottenham, they're not looking what everybody expected under Mourinho. Same old Mourinho, end of the day. So I don't see much coming out of Tottenham. It's Spurs. We're not going to speak highly of them and Mourinho as well. But touching on those other topics, I do feel Arsenal have a chance of making it into the top 4 or top 5, if that is the not top 4. I agree with Brendon there. I think Leicester. Luckily for Leicester, I do think, like Brendon said, COVID hit them at the right time, in a sense. Sadly to say, but their momentum was not on their side, and there was a slim possibility. Even then, for me, they were still too far ahead, which is now they're still too far ahead. But yeah, now I think, like you say, players like Vardy, all these Oaks have time to recuperate, have time to look over things, re-establish their morale, almost start from fresh, which is what it is, and I think they'll come out firing. So that's out of the question. It's just down to top 5, which we do have a chance, but there are other teams like Sheffield and them all around there. But yeah, we if we win that game in hand with City, we go within 1 point of fifth. So from there's a chance.
Yeah, well, so it sounds like we all agree that top four is a bit out of the question for this season, but top five is still very much on for Arsenal.
Yeah. Well, I think we've also spoken a lot about other teams' players coming back into the fold. What about players? I think there's a key player that we can use again this season in Torreira. That was a season-ending injury before that. How do you think he's going to impact the team? And do you think, I don't know, who's going to jump in here? Whoever feels the strongest about it. How is Arteta going to use him? And is he as integral or more integral to Arteta than he was to Emery? How does it seem?
Let's pass this on to Michael.
Well, if Arteta can get out of Torreira what we first saw when he got to the club, then he will be a big part of this club going forward. He was, when he just arrived, he was the player that Arsenal were missing for so many years. He might have been a small Uruguayan, but he's like a dogged player. He likes a tackle. He likes getting into the action. But at the end of Emery's reign, or this whole season, we started to see him more in an attacking role, and it did not suit him at all. Even though he has some attacking skills, it's clear that his abilities lie in the defense. So I'm guessing Arteta is the man to get the best out of Torreira, and I truly hope so, because then he will have a big part to play for this club.
Well, I was asking if you think he's part of the team. Maybe you can touch on this, because even just before he got his injury, it seemed like Arteta started playing the Xhaka-Ceballos combination in midfield. So I'm not sure if Torreira has a future there. And then we go on to transfers. He's been linked with so many moves away because he's unsettled.
So yeah, couple of questions there. We start with the Ceballos and Xhaka, and is there really a future for Torreira under Arteta? If you look at all City, Barcelona, all of these, where Arteta comes through from the academy, there is normally a holding midfielder. So I do feel there is space for this kind of player, but that comes with a tactical form. We don't have the players, I think, to play that. We don't have the quality. And of course, we've got players on big balls that we've got to play behind striker, which I don't think Arteta's eventually going to, I think Arteta's going to play more of a B. But going more back to the question there, I think Ceballos and Xhaka, there's not a lot of, they both work. Xhaka's positioning and everything has been worked on under Arteta, but his pace has something to be desired. And, Ceballos is more of an attacking player. I give you that. He's a hard worker. He will work up and down the field for you, but I think against a team like City, if we're going to play a Xhaka and Ceballos in the midfield there, we're going to get eaten apart. So I think there is a future for Torreira there. He's still a young player. Arteta is clearly a coach that is there, willing to develop players, willing to work with the youngsters. You see how involved he is with the training sessions. He's there, pointing out, shouting. This is what he is hands-on. He's not like a Ferguson. Ferguson, he never trained, maybe not never, but he hardly trained a session. He left the sessions to Mike Phelan and those guys, and they... he told them what to do, don't get me wrong. Do this session or work on this or work on, maybe. But Arteta's are very hands-on, and I think that's good for the youth. So I think he can develop him into a player that we need in the future. Maybe not now.
So, sorry, just when we're talking about the hands-on approach Arteta has, that it looks like he's starting to reintegrate Nathan Niles into the team in that midfield trio position, the second midfielder, not the holding, but just the box-to-box midfield, which also might be an interesting development going forward. I think let's switch over to a hot topic, which is always, we can talk about this the whole day, is transfers, transfer news. And we touched on that regarding the Torreira situation as well. Like, I know you've sent me a lot of details regarding Torreira where it says he's homesick. He's linked with a lot of move back to Italy, Inter Milan, and I think Napoli are the two teams that are always linked with him. How valid do you think those links are?
Yeah, well, I have read a lot of stories about Torreira being homesick and being linked with like AC Milan and Napoli and those clubs. But I think, especially the way Arsenal are going now as a club, and we do have a lot of big players. They might not perform as much, but with the big players, the speculation will always be a part of it. I think it's too soon for Torreira to be wanting a move back to AC Milan. I think a lot of the Arsenal players are invested in what Arteta is trying to do with the club. So I think for the best part, at least another season, that Torreira will stick around to see what happens.
Well, I definitely hope so because even though he's only been here like a short season and a half, 2 seasons, he's one of my favourites just because of the type of passion he shows on the field. Dean, also regarding transfers, then we need to touch on the most talked about Arsenal transfer so far. Is obviously the Aubameyang situation. The latest news I saw coming out today was that a lot of it falls on his father. His father is a big influence on what his decision is, and that he might be holding out for an offer from Barcelona. I don't think that's very true, but that's the latest I've heard.
Yeah, look, as I mentioned before, Arsenal's financial situation is not looking good at the moment. If you consider, we go back to the whole Ozil thing again, where he's earning 350 and he hasn't 350 a week, basic salary, and he hasn't played 50% of the season. How can you justify that? So we've got a player that probably deserves 350 and a player that was, I don't know, arguably worth 350 at a stage. I don't know if he is now. That's another argument, I guess. But yeah, Aubameyang is a player that Arsenal during this transition might not want to lose. We've been against we've had our back against the wall for a long time now, losing star players. It's been from the Invincible, after the Invincible days, how we started losing players from there, and it hasn't stopped. So when is it going to stop? So this is just to me a sign that every time if we get a good deal, we get a good player in, he's going to leave us, or we're going to run his contract, or he's going to run his contract down and end up leaving on the cheap. Look at Bakayoko Saka. It's another poor management of player contracts. I don't understand how the club keeps making the same mistake when it comes to contracts. Aubameyang's in this situation. Firstly, how do you spend that much money on a player and only sign him to a 3.5-year deal? That does not make sense to me. So initially that contract was never long enough for that amount of money. Should be tying a player down to 5 years. I guess if it's a January transfer, 4.5 years. But you can't spend that much money and 3 years because he came in January, so 3.5 years. So 2.5 years, you're looking down the barrel of him leaving for free. How?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous how our contracts are negotiated. And I'm sure that Aubameyang would be happy with a longer contract because he's an older player, so tying down his future for extended period, I think, would be in his interest. Mike, talking about players that are currently running down their contracts, where do you think players like Saka, Oba, are they going to end up signing, or you're going to have to deal with it like we have done in numerous occasions during the past?
Well, Brendon, as far as I understand, there's quite a few Arsenal players on the last year of their contract. Well, I know about Luiz, Saka, and Aubameyang, and not even there's more for the end of the season. And at the end of next season, there are more players at the last year of the contract, like Lacazette and Mustafi. And I know everyone's not the biggest Mustafi fan, but
He's gaining value.
I know everyone's not the biggest Mustafi fan, but like you guys said, it's poor player contract management. But I think every Arsenal fan would be the first to tell Arteta that players like Saka and Aubameyang can't leave. We actually had the conversation last week about what Jamie Carragher said. He said that it might be worth Arsenal to let Aubameyang's contract run out because with him we've got a lot better chance to end in the top 4 next season. So it might be worth the risk just to get Arsenal back into the top 4 and let him run down his contract. I know there's a lot of external factors. Aubameyang has come out. He said people like to talk, they don't know the facts, but there's also stories been coming out that Aubameyang promised his late grandfather that one day he'll play for Real Madrid. I'm sure that must be playing on his mind a bit. But yeah, from the fans' perspective, or from my perspective at least, I can see after Emery and since Arteta came in, I can see a lot of changes coming into the club. And it feels like we're starting to believe again as a club. So hopefully that convinces the players to sign contracts and to stay with us.
Dean, do you think Michael's saying players signing contracts? We've got David Luiz that's also currently, as far as I understand, in the final few months of his contract. Would you let him take that option to extend his contract, or do you think it's better to let him go and to get someone like Rob Holding more playing opportunities?
Let's touch first on the David Luiz contract situation. I would definitely extend it. Arsenal lack leaders. It's been a much talked about topic for how many years. We don't have a leader. Not to say David Luiz is the perfect leader, because he's not. I think he's a eccentric side to him. That sometimes it's not what you need in a leader. But yeah, touching back on that, we definitely need to extend that contract for another year. I think, after that, it's time for him for both of us to move on. But we definitely need him next season for his experience. But yeah, touching on the, whether I would let Aubameyang's contract run down, I probably would. Maybe it's a good idea to focus on Saka's contract and a couple of these other younger players' contract. Bump the Martinellis and the Nelsons and all of these guys to proper contracts, extend them for 5 years so we don't sit with the same problem. And then yes, maybe let Aubameyang go for free, because now what are we, we're talking Aubameyang going in the region of 20 to 30 million. You make more money by making the Champions League than you get from that. So financially, to me, it sounds like a better idea to go for Champions League than to sell a player for less money than you're going to make by making Champions League, let alone the the merchandising, the tickets, the revenue, all of these, the extra payments for advertising boards, all of these will bring in more money that we've been craving for at Arsenal. And yeah, to me, it's worth more money to make Champions League than to sell Aubameyang. So if we can invest the rest of the squad, keep Aubameyang on his contract, and make Champions League next year, then it's worth a lot more money. And you might even still be able to convince him after making Champions League to stay. So,
well, I think 30 million probably sounded a lot to clubs after this coronavirus pandemic, because of the lack of revenue and funds. But I think the signing of Timo Werner, how do you pronounce it, from RB Leipzig to Chelsea, has just raised that bargain, because he was signed for 50 million, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I think if you need to compare the quality between Werner or Werner to Aubameyang, he still has a long way to go. So I think you can't sell him for less than what Chelsea just signed him for.
Well, you have to take age into account as well, Bren. Aubameyang's about 32 years old. Werner's still a young player with a lot to learn. I agree with you. I would rather have Aubameyang in my side, but that obviously has a big effect on the transfer fees.
That's true. Well, I think the last transfer we should touch on is the potential arrival of Partey, Dennis Prayet from Atletico Madrid. How likely do you guys think that is, and who do you think it's going to spell the end for in our midfield? Because I think they'll have to make way for either Xhaka or Torreira, in my personal opinion, or he might just take the place of Dani Ceballos, even though he's not a similar player to Ceballos.
Yeah, well, Bren, the only way I can really see Partey coming in is a player that I would like to see at Arsenal, but realistically, I only see him coming in if we do decide to sell Torreira. I don't think he would come in the place of a player like Dani Ceballos, because then we would probably be looking for a more creative player. Someone who can join in on the attack, create goals, score goals, and have that general hard work of the defensive or the centre midfielder, as Partey would have.
Ian, what's your opinion on the whole situation?
Yeah, look, I don't think we're going to have no funds available whatsoever. There has to be something in. If it has to come from the board, which is asking a lot, I guess. But to me, there has to be some form of investment. Otherwise, there's no chance. Even with the players coming through, I just don't think there's enough of a rounded team. As I said earlier, Arteta's got a style he'll eventually develop into, which he is busy working on, but he doesn't have those players. So not to invest would be detrimental. So I think we can, depending on how much we're gonna be asked for by Atletico for Partey, but maybe you can look at rather selling a couple of fringe players or something for 5 million here, 10 million there. Okay, well, during these times, maybe 2 to 5 million. But, raise about 20, and then maybe with another 20 to 30, we've got Partey, and then we don't need to lose Torreira, because I think, we need depth in the midfield on a different kind. I know we have depth, but we need to focus, because the funds are not going to be available. So we need to focus on a position, on probably one position, and defense we overloaded. And there's Saliba still coming in next season. So there, I think we're fine. We got to develop Saliba. We've got to develop players like Holding and all of these, or maybe Holding or those players are the ones that need to be dropped off. But hopefully we can get him without needing to sell any big players.
Yeah, well, I personally feel that our defense, it's so stocked with numbers. It's just a matter of choosing the right combination and letting them settle in. Because I think we all were so excited about someone like Holding just before he got his injury. I think we just need to give him time to recapture some of that form before we decide to move too much of our defenders on. I think because this is our first podcast, the final thing I want to touch on is the Emery versus Arteta era. Looking at I know we can have this conversation. We can chat probably an hour or two just regarding this topic. But Ian, what do you feel are the biggest changes that Arteta has installed in this team?
Tactically or mentally?
Just overall look,
overall
feel what you can see.
Well, tactically and mentally, both sides have improved. Let's touch on the mental side first. You can see the players are a lot more hungry. There's a lot more confidence. Even during Arteta's first 9 or so games where he struggled for a win. But even then, you could see the players were enjoying playing more, were playing more freely. I think under Emery, from what you heard from the players and stuff, he got, in a sense, too not too tactical, but too in depth on. He went too in depth on issues that may not have been as relevant as people, as some of the squad members thought, and missed out on others. But yeah, from what I heard, his video sessions and tactical breakdowns were hard to sit through. So I think on the fun side, on the enjoyment, happiness, they're enjoying themselves. They're fitter than they've been in a long time. I think that's a big thing that Arteta complained about when he stood in. He said how unfit these players are. So on the mental side, the players are a lot more happier. You can see it. Technically, as you saw in the beginning, he focused a lot on defense, which of course took away from our attacking side. But to me, under Emery defensively, he tried to put everything behind the ball, but failed hopelessly at it. He tried to go defense, or he tried to sacrifice attacking for defensive, but he just sacrificed both at the end of the day. Our defense was horrible and our attack was horrible. But then you saw Arteta kind of develop into a new phase where, yes, we started conceding more shots and started leaving more gaps in the defense, but our attacking game started coming into play. And yeah, technically, it's getting back to that old Arsenal, that possession game, that fast counter-attack game. It's, of course, depending on the situation, counter-attack or possession, but he breaks between that. And then his pressing game is something, that you would only see under Guardiola's and of course Klopp. Klopp's the biggest at his pressing game, but that's what Arteta complained about, or why he complained about the fitness in the beginning, was because he tried this pressing game, and you saw, we were strong in parts of the game, or we suffered first half, came back second half strong, so it was a lot of adaptation, and like we touched on earlier in the episode, that there's been a lot of time to work on the players and work on everything. So hopefully the fitness and everything is picked up, and yeah, we can see what Arteta's really been trying to implement. But I see a massive difference technically and mentally and tactically on all the players physically.
Yeah, it's quite strange because even though we drew like the first, I can't remember, I think it was 5 games, of his reign. It was still much more enjoyable to watch, even though we had like a victory here, a loss there under Emery and under Ljungberg. Ljungberg was also much better to watch, but I feel just his whole tactics, there's just a tactical aspect watching it is very enjoyable already. Mike, and on that, the last 5 games, I would say we saw a big increase in shots on target against Arsenal's goals. So I believe that's because we try to start opening up and play a bit more expansive. How do you feel, and how does that compare to maybe the first few games under Arteta and the last few games under Emery?
Well, Bren, there's actually quite a lot to say on this topic, obviously. But the first thing I would like to say is, I do agree with Dean that especially at the end of Emery's reign, he tried to get all the players behind the ball. But to me, the problem, or his problem, was that he didn't put any pressure on the players. Even though we had a lot of players behind the ball defending, there were no pressures. We allowed the other team to attack and to play their style. So that was the biggest problem. And that was obviously the first thing Arteta addressed when he came to Arsenal. He tried to sort out our defence, which we have been doing a lot better in recently, and he started to put pressure on the other team. But 2 things Arteta came out straight away and said that he wants to work on for Arsenal is our transition play. how we transition from attack to defense and defense to attack. And as well as he wants to be an attacking team, he wants to impose his style of gameplay onto the other side. As it sounds like for Arteta, the best form of defense is attack, and with the amount of attacking talent that is within our squad, I would agree with him, because at this moment defense is our biggest problem. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see Arteta really getting his style of play into the team and how we impose it onto other sides.
And I think we all are, in the same boat. We just want the season to get started to see, how this break helped with the team. If Arteta was able to work a bit more with the team, his formations, how the squad's fitness is. But yeah, I think we can continue talking for hours. Like we said, Arsenal is a topic all of us love talking about. And there's so much we can cover because this is the first time we've recorded. I'm going to put you both on the spot before we leave. Dean, give me a prediction for Wednesday and Arsenal's league finishing position.
That's a bit unfair. Yes, I'm on the spot. Yeah, look, I'm looking City 2-1 against Arsenal. Then I'm seeing us finishing 6th. I don't know. Maybe that's gonna go down bad in the books, but yeah.
Well, I mean, we have to have this episode to compare it to something. Now, after 2 or 3 games, we can come back and we can readjust it.
Yeah, of course.
Depending on form, what's happened.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be fun to come back and see. Okay, we thought this type of league position before we saw a ball kicked after the coronavirus. Yeah. Mike, what are your predictions?
Well, Brain, if I take into account the overall quality of the squads and the form throughout the season, I completely agree with Dean. I see a 2-1 City and a 6th place for Arsenal at the end of the season. But I'm always the optimistic fan. It's been locked down now. We're coming back first game after the Aston Villa match. There's not anything that we can expect. Anything can happen during these games. I think Arsenal would win this game 2-1. I know it's very optimistic, and I'm also going to go with an optimistic 5th place for Arsenal at the end of the season.
Well, I'm going to say it is very optimistic, but I agree with you. I think there's probably not a better time to play City. I feel that, just before the lockdown happened, they played against Man United and they lost. So I think they will have come back with like a vengeance, just to make sure that they don't lose 200 tries, especially against 2 bigger teams. So I'll just give my predictions quickly. I think it's going to be a draw. Arsenal, it's never low scoring. I think it's probably going to be a 2-2 draw. And league position, I agree. I think 6th place is attainable. I just hope we get that high. Not to be too negative. But guys, thanks for joining me. Thanks for everything. I think it was very good.
Can I ask a question before we leave?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's something I've been thinking about during the day. A big talking point for Arsenal fans during the last few years is our youngsters and our academy projects that we're bringing through. Let's just talk about next season, maybe. What do you guys think are the best route to take with the youth squad that we have, like Joe Willock, Bukayo Saka, Eddie Nketiah, Emmy Smith, Rowe, all those types of players? Do you think it's best to try and develop them at Arsenal, or do as we did with Reece Nelson or Emmy Smith Rowe and send them out on loan?
Dean, you can take it first.
Yeah, look, the youth that's coming through Arsenal now can set us up for a decade to come. If these players have the quality, it can set us up to be the The biggest team in Europe. Yeah, I know it's saying a lot, but let's go back to Barcelona's La Masia, with the Messis, the before Messi's, let's go from Puyol, Piqué, all of these oaks that came through La Masia that they've developed and built. What financially do you think is better, to buy a player for 220 million or to develop him in your youth? Yeah, it's difficult, but if you get it right, go back to Man United with David Beckham and those youngsters that came through then. So this could be, this could be our time to dominate for the next 10 years if these youngsters are on the level. But you look across to Stamford Bridge and they've got a similar project going over themselves. So yeah, to me, these youngsters need to be given a shot at the first team. Most of them have a lot of first team experience. But next season they really need to start nailing down these starting positions, and yeah, let's see if there's quality there.
Yeah, well, I think personally, if we can hold on to someone like Saka, it's a bright future for Arsenal. I would personally like to see someone like Smith Rowe play under Ozil for a year. Get him develop the movements. Maybe help him with holding onto the ball a second longer, releasing it a second faster. I think that would be a very interesting position for Smith Rowe. The little I've seen him play, I think he's got the potential to replicate someone like Ozil with a bit more of a dynamic defensive style. Someone like Willock, I really like the guy. I just don't see currently where he fits the mold into the Arteta squad. He's a bit like a young Ramsey, where he doesn't really know where his best position is, what type of midfielder he's going to be. So I'm a bit concerned with him. But yeah, I think if you can mold all of these players, it would be beneficial, like Ian said, and we probably will be able to dominate, hopefully, the Premier League. I think if you look at Nketiah, just scored another hat-trick in the Charlton friendly, so we've got a lot of promising young talent.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Ian, anything you want to touch before we leave?
No, just jump back on Willock and the Ramsey comparison. I think it's actually a very good comparison. They're both the box-to-box midfielder, but to me don't do enough defensively to be labelled as the box-to-box midfielder. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how Willock, I agree with you. I like Willock a lot. I see a future for him, but he needs to add goals to his game. For me, I see him further up the pitch. If he works on his defensive game, then maybe he can be the box-to-box. But, yeah, he needs to develop his game a bit further to start really cementing a place in the Arsenal team.
Michael, final words?
Yeah, well, from my side, for most of the Arsenal youngsters, I would also like to see them develop throughout the Arsenal side, mostly. There are a few that I would send out on loan for the development, such as Joe Willock. I think he has a lot of promise, but I think he might need some regular first team football to really develop as a player. But then it comes down to which club you send him. To me, I think it might be best to do a similar thing as to Emile Smith Rowe and send him into the Football League, like Emmy Smith Rowe into Huddersfield. And then I disagree a little bit with you, Ben, with Smith Rowe turning, being able to become a player like Ozil. With the way I've seen him play throughout the years for Arsenal, I think he can become more like Kevin De Bruyne. He's got a lot of. He's very attacking minded. He's got a lot of quality. He's got goals in him. He obviously doesn't have the passing or the vision that Kevin De Bruyne has, or neither the scoring ability, anything like that. But he's still 19 years old, and he's got a lot of time to develop. So I think if we ever were to replicate a player such as Kevin De Bruyne, the best chance would be with Smith Rowe.
Well, that's what I mentioned, a bit more dynamic Ozil, which De Bruyne to me is. I think the vision, everything Ozil's got, it's just Kevin is a bit more dynamic, being able to run around, tackle, all of the things that Ozil apparently can't do.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think he's gonna. So he's on track, De Bruyne, to break Thierry Henry's assist record, which Ozil missed out on that one season. So I agree with you there that it's Ozil doesn't have a variation to his game, and in today's game you need more to your game. You can't just offer up assists and stand. Not saying that he hasn't developed better in that sense or gotten better in that sense, but De Bruyne I see more as the all-round player than Ozil. And De Bruyne's assists speak for it that he's on the same assist or creative level as Ozil, if not better.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, guys, like I said, thanks for joining. I think it was a really good chat. We touched on a lot of topics. Hopefully, the more we do it, we can filter down and just discuss one or two topics because there's so much to discuss. And everyone, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Please go follow us, like I said, our Instagram page, Arsenal Fan Theory, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.